Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to the series we're doing on strategic management. This week we'll be calling Session 7 or Chapter 7, International Strategy, Creating Value in a Global Markets. And you're either taking me an online class, a face-to-face class, or one of my workshops. So you already have access to my concept maps. Let's see, the course material that is added within the curriculum that you're taking me in. So let's start off with international. Remember, I'm looking at the strategic management series on how do I strategically position my organization, or why should I strategically position my organization within the global markets. And what you'll find out, whether you're a small company or a large company or medium company, especially here in the United States, we have Mexico on one end and we have Canada on the other one. We should be doing more trading, more strategically planning to utilize markets outside the U.S. Those small companies who basically do utilize markets outside the U.S. By selling the goods or services, or even buying goods and services, depending on the exchange rate, and depending on the exchange rate and the strength or the weakness of the U.S. dollar, you should be strategically positioned. You'll find out that you are more successful because you have access to more customers. Okay, so let's talk about international strategy. And we'll just go over here, and you have the concept. And so what we're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you a quick overview. We're going to talk about international strategies, factors affecting a nation's competitiveness, okay? And that's, for me as a small business, which nation is more competitive than others? International expansion motivations. International expansion, there's risk in that. Risk from corruption. And, some countries or markets we're going to go to is more corrupt. Do we want to go into that market? And if we do go into the market, how do we minimize our risk? Okay, and the managing the risk, what we would call risk management and management strategies that favor global expansion. And it's either small or large companies is irrelevant. Multi-domestic strategy. I may not be a multinational company, but I just want to. My strategy may be a little more focal. Instead of a global strategy, you find out that I could use the same marketing tools, same marketing campaign, similar advertising on a global scale. And if you look at Visa or Master, more Visa, because Visa, the selection of Visa, it's global, and they basically utilize the same techniques or marketing strategies long-term globally. When I'm looking at multi-domestic, I will fine-tune it for something that may be just to local or one country, or within that country I like to even break it down to different segments, because I'm catering more to the individual's preference. What we will find out in this short lecture is their pricing, their tastes, a lot of other things, variables that will make my product either acceptable or make my product not the best in the world, okay? And then how do I enter different entry modes to get into the national market? Okay, so let's go into, we're going to start off in here. I think I got this big enough here. We'll start off with international strategy. Now, if I look at international strategy, we've heard about globalization. So let's start with globalization. Globalization, basically, international exchanges. Move this over here a little bit so you can see. And I might just increase to just a little bit, go to 250. It seems a little bit easier for you to follow if you're looking on your smartphone. Or if you, remember, you can always expand and contract. You got the plus or the negative to make the screen smaller. Okay, international exchanges have been increased. Rise of market capitalization around the world. Trade in goods and services, we're becoming like the economist Friedman, we're a flat economy. When I say flat, it doesn't make a difference where at the world we affect each other's economies, directly or indirectly. Okay, exchange of money, information, and ideas. Okay, now when I look at similarities, when I'm looking at what's similar to certain cultures where I'll be operating strategically. Open up my product line or my services, I have to look at the laws. I have to look at the rules. I have to look at the norms of the society or the market I'm going. I'm looking at demographics, in lack of better words, their value system, their ideas. Does my values meet their values? And same thing like in a domestic market, people overseas in a foreign market will basically buy my product either by my name recognition, by my brand, or the connections I have. If I'm giving to some kind of charity, or am I environmentally safe, or am I organic or natural. Those are all strategic plans that may work domestically, but it still carries over to the global market, okay? Because there's a lot of similar, certain markets are very similar to our own in the U.S. Okay, what are some of the challenges? Balancing between emerging markets, I mean new markets coming up. How do I sell to them? How do I position myself, knowing that I may not I have to change my product's the same. It's just the way I distribute what they call the value chain in here. My distribution has to be a little bit different. The customers, again, when I look at the customers, how to meet the needs at every level of income. And then basically here's the growth in the gross domestic product. And I'm not going to come up because it's usually showing up too bad, but it does show exhibit growth per person. And if I look at it, China is why you look at so much businesses, large multinational corporations going to China and India. 1.5 billion, a little bit more, 1.5 billion again of people from India. Those are markets that are prime for my product or products. They're not saturated, but what's happening, their economy is growing, and as they're growing, their standard of living, the quality of life is changing. Now they have more disposable or discretionary income that they can spend. So this makes a big difference when I'm looking strategically. And then you can see why some countries, why a lot of companies are focusing on China. Remember, there's only like 400 million Americans, but there's 1.5 billion Chinese or 1.5 billion people from India. Okay? So now, some other factors affecting nations' competitiveness. That's kind of easy. When I look at it, factors of endowment basically involve factors of production, land capital, and labor. A lot of countries have the land. They may have the labor, but the labor, is it the labor I'm looking for? Is it trained labor? I think capital. Is there money from in the country to be able to help me set up my operation? Or do I have to bring all my finances or capital within the market? And it depends whether it's a developing country or it's already an established country or emerging economy like Asia or China and India. And if you really look at it, China's going to surpass the U.S. I mean, they're already there and not surpassing because they're doing more. There's more people, so the economy is growing, robust, and the standard of living is going up. But if we, as Americans, small businesses especially, could get into that market, we'll do pretty well going forward. Okay? So now the other one is demand conditions. Now, if I look at the demand conditions, demands that consumers place on an industry, whatever I'm selling, products or anything else, meet high standards of that culture or that market. Remember, a market is someplace that there's a need and a want and ability for them to purchase my good. But my goods maybe have to be modified a little bit for that market, or maybe they don't need all the frills and trills to keep the costs down until the economy expands. And if you look at a lot of individuals that go into the Chinese market, because they have a lot of competition within their own domestic market to make the products faster, more efficient, at a lower cost. Okay, create innovative products and services, better anticipate future global demand, and proactively respond to product and service requirements. No different than we're doing in the domestic. Related and supportive industries. Okay, now if I look at related and supportive industries, let me bring this up here a little bit, just so you can see it. Okay, I'll leave it like this so you can see what related and supportive industries. Let's bring this in here so you can kind of follow along. Okay. Enable firms to manage inputs more effectively, A competitive supplier base. Remember, I'm looking at suppliers, related supporting industry. Me going strategically, if I'm open up an operation, I may have the product, but where's my supply base? Where's my manufacturing? Is there? Where's my goods and raw materials, for lack of better words, coming in there? So I have to have a good relationship with a competitive supply base, not just one supplier, but multiple, to be fairly competitive. So I know I'm getting the best price. So I could do some negotiation and get the best price for my supplies. Okay, and reduces manufacturing costs. Close relationship with suppliers allows for joint research and development of related industries. Remember, suppliers are just as involved in our process, or in your process, as you want to be involved with them. They have the input. They're the ones that come in with the raw material. They have a good understanding of their products or their services that we're buying from them. Utilize them as a resource. They want to, if we are successful as an organization strategically, and they align with us strategically, what basically happens is that we both grow and we both prosper and we both profit from our alliances. Okay, forces to existing firms. Okay, if I'm looking forces existing firms to practice forces existing firms, to practice cost control, product innovation, and better distribution. So if I'm looking at all these industries, supporting industries, they do a lot. My suppliers, my vendors do a lot to support me. Okay, firms, strategies, structures, and rivalry. If I'm looking at this, other firm strategies and structure rivalry, strong customer demand for my product, or the product of, I always got competition. Strong supplier base, that is good. It makes me strong because I could get my, I don't have, I got a steady flow of raw material coming in at an inexpensive cost because it's closer to my manufacturing and my customer base. Everything is self-centered. When you look at the logistics, when we go later on strategically, you have to look at the value logistics change, which where's my suppliers, my distribution, how to get the goods to my manufacturing, and from my manufacturer, how to get my goods to the retailer, and from the retailer, how to get my goods to the ultimate customer. Domestic rivalry. When I look at domestic, leads to a search for new markets. Rivalry is a strong indicator of global competition. So if I have competition, which is good. Remember, from a strategic point, I don't like to be the only vendor or supplier of goods and no competitor. But what we've learned from the product life cycle, you understand firms come in and go out depending where we fall in the product life cycle. So strategically what happens, let's say if we're in the product life cycle, we're into maturity or in the decline stage, and our market here is saturated, it's so much easier to, instead of reinvent a new product and everything else, I got all the distribution, I got all the knowledge, we talked last chapter on human capital, I have all that, let's just find a new market to sell my product. But I had to understand that market and get to it. It's a lot easier to, instead of coming up with an innovative, because to them it'll be innovative still, there's a need for it. Here we're saturated. And I look at high definition television. Everyone has a lot of high definition television is like a normal thing for a lot of people. You very rarely see any analog TVs or the old televisions. Everything else is high definition. But we saturated the market here. Now, China and India, there's still a large demand for them. There's a lot of people that, as their quality of life, standard of living is going up, it means they have more cash, more disposable income. I could sell to them over there instead of coming up with a brand new idea and changing my whole process, okay? Example of on this. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, and this one here is kind of already a little bit big. Let's see if I could kind of bring it in here. So what I'm looking at is domestic rivalry, factors of endowment, related supporting industry, domestic demand and condition. All this, you see, keeps on going. U.S. demand and condition. We come from here. We sell to these. We go this way. This is a whole large network of public and private, public-private educational institution, weak but rapidly growing communication infrastructure, duty-free access to import computer software following economic liberalization. A real fancy word. What does it mean? We're a flat economy, flat world, okay? Just bring that up. I have to adjust this. There we go. I'll just put that in there. Okay, so now we close that off. Let's look at the next one. International expansion motivations. Why would I, as a company, want to expand? And I mentioned it already, a few ideas why we would want to expand. We already saturated the market. There's no more demand for our market. Or, lack of better words, we got a better reputation. Now we want to start all over. So we could start a new market and say, hey, we did things wrong here, or we didn't work out right, our quality went on, we improved it, but people remember us because we're a smaller market. Let's try a new market, and we'll start the process again. But this time we're going to be quality better, and we're going to rebrand ourselves to a whole new market and come back alive, and that rebranding brings money back into our domestic market. For this is where our base of operation is. Okay, so increased market state, attain economies of scale, advantage of bridge opportunity. When I look at that bridge opportunities, let's look at this. In every stage of the value chain. When they talk about the value chain, I'm looking at the logistic distribution. From everyone who touches my product or service, how do I get it out? How do I make it? Opportunity to profit by buying and selling the same goods in different markets, buying something where it's cheap and selling something, and I hate to use the word cheap, inexpensive or better quality, a better cost for my product, okay, and selling it where it commands a higher price. This makes sense. I buy it here, and if you look at a lot of people when they go to the flea market, and I'm trying to I just want to minimize. You understand the concept? I go to a flea market, I buy something else. Somebody throws it away and says, "Hey, it's a piece of junk. It's old furniture." I clean it up, and I sell it as antique. I get it for an expensive thing, and I double, triple my price. The same quality, same thing. I just have to do something with the value change. I clean it, I redistribute it, I repackage it, and put it back out, and I'm making money. And so my profitability is my labor, buying the resources, modifying it or fixing it up, and basically now selling it at a higher cost with some minor alterations. Okay, enhanced product growth, revigorating the product life cycle. Okay, optimize location of value chain to enhance performance, reduce the cost, and reduce the risk. All they're basically saying. We look at if you take I do a series on logistic distribution, and if I'm looking at logistic distribution, it's the distribution chain of how everything comes. Why Walmart is so keeps their costs down because they control the whole value distribution chain. They control from the manufacturing, they control the transportation, they control the warehouse, they make sure the manufacturing facilities are close by, they're close by to the customer base. So this close proximity to where the customer base is, I basically reduce my costs. I don't have to pay for shipping charges or anything else because I'm centrally located and I have my resources. And when I look at the factors of production, we talked earlier, land, capital, human element, and knowledge are all parts of the factors of production. Okay, explore reverse innovation, design manufacturing products locally, export no-frill products to develop market. When I say no-fill products, is remember, certain market, if I'm looking at our cars, everyone has to have air conditioning, it has to have a GPS, has to have, and I'm not talking about the safety issue, I'm just talking about all the little things that we take: power windows, air conditioning, power seats, heated seats, fully loaded. Now, if I'm going into China and and I'm just using that as an example, or some of the countries where they're developing, or energy is expensive, or gasoline prices are expensive, even though right now the gasoline prices have been stabilized. But if I'm going to a country like this and I'm trying to, for lack of a better word, sell my product, they don't want all that. They don't have the technology. They don't have the smartphone. They don't need all that. There's too much added accessories for that market because they can't afford that price. So I still make it a safe car. Everything else, they just got a regular radio. They don't have to have all that big screen or anything else. They don't have to have all the video cameras behind there. It's just a stripped down model of a car for that market. It works perfect. And then as the standard of living and the quality of life goes up, and then people have more discretionary income, then they'll be able to go from my car or my product and upgrade to the next level of product or services that I'll be offering. Okay, so we'll turn that off. Now, international expansion risk. There's risk in anything we do. You have political risk. Oh, political risk. All you have to do is what's happening in the Middle East. What's happening in a lot of the other countries. What's happening in China. What's, between China, Japan, and everything else that's going on between some islands they're arguing about. And I'm not going to take light of it. But that political risk, what's going on, or a change of government, it makes a big deal. It's hard for me to work with something where I don't know what are the rules and regulation. Will they accept my product? Will they naturalize my product? Will there be safety for my employees? So all that I have to look at it if I'm going to open up in that. So if I'm looking strategically, I'm looking how stable the organization or the country is that I'm going to go into. If it's vital, that means it's unstable, I may do it, but I might minimize my operation. Or I may have my operation in a country close to it and just import and export the goods and services to that. You have to think strategically, depending where you're marketing, depending what you're selling. Okay, due to social unrest, military turmoil, demonstration, terrorism, and you see it even in Greece, European Union, they're demonstrating about the austerity. You don't want to be in there because the demonstrations any demonstrations. And I'm not saying all demonstrations. Most demonstrations are very peaceful, but you're always going to get those people, the rilers, the ones that want to get the thing going just for whatever reason, and it could turn from a peaceful demonstration to a what do you call it? A disorderly demonstration, and my product or something could get hurt. Depends on what they're demonstrating about. Absence of rule of law can lead to destruction of property, disruption of operation, non-payment of goods and services, arbitrary government decision. And you see that in Venezuela. I'm not picking Venezuela, I'm just using it as a general. Venezuela, whatever reason, they have high inflation, they have shortage of goods, so who are you going to blame? You're going to blame the corporation. So there, if I'm doing there, and they say you have to set the price, everything else. After a while, I may say it's not worth it to be in this climate, and I'm just going to minimize or reduce my operation in that country till the economy or the political climate becomes a little bit stable. As a business, if I have to work in a climate, I'm not too worried, if it's a communist country, a socialist country, or a dictatorship, or a monarchy, as long as it's stable and I know the rules and the laws and what's governing for me as a company and operation, and I know, once I know the rules and laws, and I say, hey, I could work within those confines, it's fine. The problem is when it's unstable, one day it's this way, one day it's this way, I can't work in that. That's just too, you can't run a business that way, okay? The other one is economic risk. When I look at the, due to piracy and counterfeiting, so if I'm looking at economic, there's a big issue when a lot of manufacturers would go to China, and they would basically have their products and everything built in there. Now, if they didn't have the copyright laws, or they didn't have certain protections for me, for my product, that there wasn't copyright, or somebody didn't counterfeit my product, basically, why would I want to go in there taking their risk? Giving them, even in a manufacturing plant, a small plant, they could distribute everything else in China, and even though they may not come to the U.S., but I'm not making my return on my investment that I put in there because there's counterfeiting. So now my product is no longer the quality. It looks like mine, but it isn't mine, or it may be mine, but a lower price. So there's some disconnect there. I don't have any recourse. But if the laws are there and everything else, that's what China's doing. They're enforcing the laws, enforcing the counterfeiting laws. Because a lot of large companies say, hey, we're going to come in there, we'll help develop, we'll supply the capital, but we want to minimize the risk on us so we can make a fair do of our the copyrights, our protection, our ideas are protected, and at least for the short term or strategically, that we could recoup on our investments. Okay, management due risk. Okay, when I look at management risk due, I'm looking at culture. I'm looking to the language, income level. There's a risk to management. I'm looking at customer preferences. So management has to look at the risk that's due to. I should go in here. That's why it makes sense. I eliminate a lot due to the customer's preference, distribution systems. That's why a lot of times it makes sense to alliance with somebody that's stable, that's already established in there, and they could sell my product. And after I learn the distribution or the logistics system, then I could come in and I could either adjust it or find another logistics system, or create my own and develop my own while there. Need for local adaptation of standard product. I always wanted not to make too much adaptation to my product, but my base product, like in the U.S., here's a base product. If that I don't have to modify it too much, I'm happy. Then I could add on all the additives. You want this, that's all added. But the base product, I like to keep standardized so I could, because that's where I make my money. I don't want to do too many changes because then I got to change my production. I have to change my marketing. I have to change a variety of different things. But I'm willing to adjust if there's going to be a demand for me. I'm a business person. Strategically, if I could make a profitability, a fair return, I'm not gouging anyone or ripping anyone off, but a fair return on my investment, because that's what I had to do as a small business owner for myself, or a medium or larger ones to my stockholders. Okay? Sample a country rating system. I'm not going to go on this, but if I'm looking at different rating systems, overall risk, what they're looking at here, this overall score, there's what do you call it, for lack of better words, it's a sample country risk rating. What you're looking at, risk.com, European money market risk. North Korea, the lower the number, the higher risk. So where's the U.S. at? We're at 15. We're not that bad of a risk. Even though with everything else that we have going, people invest. Our laws, even though they're changing, but they change slowly. But they're stable, for the lack of better words, and the risk factor is lower. So there's there's more possibilities of a stable economy, or less risk, terrorism or anything else, that I could make a profitability and not worry about the destruction and everything else that's going on because the country is stable. Versus North Korea, who knows what's going to happen? When you look at North Korea, one day they're friendly, next day they're not friendly, sometimes they're not back. And same thing with Vietnam. Vietnam is another one that's, but look, it's not at the bottom. Vietnam is doing pretty good. It used to be, we used to fight with Vietnam. Now it's one of our allies, and it's developing, and we have a strong partnership economically from there. There's nice trade, tourism going into Vietnam from people that want to say, hey, what happened over there? Or you got a lot of military people want to just go back and go back without go back maybe as a closure for things that happen, and it works both ways. Okay, so now we have that, and now we're going to go into risk from corruption. Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. Now, if you look, there's an index. All this index basically reveals the most corrupt countries in the world, and scores range from 100 to very clean. The most corrupt countries in the world. Okay, Somalia, North Korea, Afghanistan, 8, Sudan, Myanmar, and countries in the in Europe, around the Russian area. Okay. So score 17. So if I'm looking at all these, smaller scores, 8, the risk, CPA risk, most corrupt. We're not on the list yet, but we're not. Look, don't say just because we're not on the list. We're not the number one. I think it was something like Denmark or Sweden that were the least corrupt countries in the world. Okay? Now, managing risk. If I'm looking at managing risk or risk management, how do you manage political risk? In the U.S., how do we manage any kind of political shift, either against the government, against our company, or against the industry as a whole? Market diversification, developing stakeholder coalitions, wooing key influence. You got to be careful. We did that with China, and now China's cracking down on corruption, and a lot of businesses that basically hired their in-laws, hired family members, they weren't even qualified. They brought them in there because they wanted, for some of the leaders in China or India. And so you look at it indirectly. Did they pay them off, or did they hire them just to basically give them a job? So it looks favorable on us. Here in the U.S., we use a lot of lobbyists, ex-congressmen, individuals who didn't win the election. They become lobbyists. What do they do? They already know the insides. They have those connections that we talked about, human capital in a previous series. And now they basically try to influence without bribery, legally, because you got the Corruption Act in the United States. Remember, the Corruption Act basically says no matter what, even though the country is corrupt, or let's say they accept payments and everything else, we as an international company based from the United States have to basically be morally and ethically sound. So we can't be paying off being corrupt, okay? Paying off politicians, for lack of better words. Okay, economic risk. When I look at global dispersion of value chain, again, when I talk about value chain, I'm looking about the logistic distribution, outsourcing. Now, offshoring. Offshoring is a lot of things, and they use this for offshoring. Could be costly, like the oil industry. Savings include lower benefits, energy costs, lower wages, regulatory taxes. But you figure when we do offshore, there are areas, even though we bring our own individuals in there, but to set up be areas where is isolated. We've been drying up all the oil, everything else. But there's other offshore operations we may do other than oil, drilling for oil. Okay, hidden offshore costs. It's a higher total wage, indirect costs. I have to bring my engineers. They don't want to go all the way out in the middle of nowhere. I got to bring them in for 6 months, or every 3 months, or every month. I got to fly them back. There's an indirect cost to keep that human element, the capital that's operating the facility safe and secure and mentally stable and mentally creative. Working forward, increase correlation costs, increase inventory to longer lead time, reduce market responsiveness, costs of protecting intellectual property. When you're looking at intellectual property, again, you're talking about individuals that have that knowledge that you need to make this operation successful. Machines can only do so much. You still have somebody to maintain them, somebody to make the quick decisions in case of emergency, somebody that could basically bring everything together so everything runs smoothly. And it's usually your human capital that we've been talking about. Okay? Now, the other thing, strategies that favor global expansion. Okay, now, when I'm looking at the ones that favor global expansions, I'm looking at standardization for all products of our market. If I could standardize the markets in different regions globally, it makes it easier. And how do you standardize the markets? Marketing 101. You try to business-to-business marketing. You get into the country like we're doing in China or India or a developing country. You help to develop the economy. You help develop your product, your industry. During developing the products and industries, you start setting up standards and specifications. And once you set up standards there, those standards will be consistent with other standards you set up in other developing countries if you're the first one in. If you're not the first one and you're doing the follow-up, or some companies do the follow-up, then you have to take your product and meet the standards of that host country or region you're working at. But if your product has a higher standard and still meets the same needs and a competitive price, then basically a lot of times you met their minimum standard and you have a higher standard, you have a competitive edge over the competition or even the domestic product. Because people will go, they believe in their own host country, figuring it's the best, but if your product is better, has a higher quality, less expensive, and does everything else, they're domestic, and it can't be like 1 cent or 50 cents. You got to be a significant decrease in the pricing. They will switch. Once they switch, then basically they'll try other products that you may be selling or developing in the future. Reduce overall expenses. And how do I do that? By spreading investments over a larger market. Remember, I do a manufacturing here, I do a sales here, I do a warehouse here. If the countries are smaller or larger, I don't have to have everything in one country. I'm looking which is the best strategically for me to be positioned in where I diversify. So if something happens in this one country here, this other one may have all this, I could switch some of my operation from there to there, or have a mini operation here and major ones here, but in case the mini ones or secondary operation, for lack of better words, could pick up the slack in the short term until I get the operation expanded or the political unrest or whatever's happening in the other country. And it doesn't have to be political unrest. It could be just the weather, the environment, or a flood or something happening that's slowed down that operation. That's happened with Japan. When Japan had worldwide everything else, they kept everything else in Japan. And when they had the floods and the typhoon coming through there, and they had a lot of areas that were flooded, their nuclear plants and their electricity, everything slowed down. They weren't diversified. That hurt their chain, the value chain of distribution for all the cars and other products they're selling, because they had everything in one spot instead of kind of spread it out in different countries that were close by, that still had a stable economy. Worldwide volume supports research and development. The standard level of quality worldwide. Everyone wants quality. No one wants junk. Pressure for reducing costs is high. Pressure for adaptation to local markets is weak. A lot of markets will, you try to adjust to them, but a lot of times you could adjust. It depends, There's not that much pressure for local markets. You got to have it my way, because they figure if I adjust it to them, there's going to be a cost added to that. Okay, assumes that homogeneous customer needs and interests prefer people. People prefer lower prices. Global market produce economies of scale. Those are just basic assumptions. Okay. Now the other one of the assumptions may be incorrect is product market. Okay, if I look at what's some of the assumption, when I look at product market, do vary widely between nations. Remember, my product in that market that I'm trying to sell, local adaptations do work. Growing interest in different features, quality and service. Technology, like it or not, permits flexible production. Because right now, if I look at a computer, when you buy or a car, let's look at a car. If I look at a car, you buy a car, it's hard to buy a car now without air conditioning. You could buy it without air conditioning. It's hard to buy a car now with automatic transmission. You could have the standard. But so what happens? Even though if I don't have air conditioning, or if I don't want the stereo, or if I don't want the whiz and bustle, they already have everything already in their setup. Technology's got the cables. They have everything else there. Makes sense. You just add it on. So on the assembly line, I want a green car. Green car. I want this in my car. It automatic, because computerization technology could make those adjustments. Your computer. You buy a computer. If you buy it in the store, one thing that's already all set. You buy it online. That assembly line doesn't change it. They just said, okay, this one has this kind of a CD player. This one doesn't. This one has this. This one basic. And it's not like you have to do much. The computer already knows, and that the assembly line will just adjust the products as it's going down the assembly line, just to be very specific to what you wanted to. What you ordered, okay? And the next one is permits flexibility production. Cost of production may not be critical to product cost. Firm strategy should not be solely product driven. Remember, not only product driven, you have to be able to do the other thing, the value and the perception. Remember, marketing, the whole thing is that I, as a consumer, have a perceived concept or idea or what I think your product's going to do. If it's quality, even though it could be the same quality as my competitor, but through marketing I say we have a better quality, we have stronger things. And it could be just that the plastic's a little bit harder, or instead of plastic it makes it look like stainless steel. And you get a lot of things when you, and I'm not picking on China or the Asian market, but the U.S. does the same thing. You get a lot of things that's real wood. You know what I mean? So I look real wood. Yeah, there is real wood, but it's fake. It's terrible wood, and you just put a laminate on top, or a press board underneath, or you press it and make it look like wood until you cut into it and you find out it's just wood chips. But the perception was I got solid wood. It's solid wood. It's just all glued together. I'm just kidding on that one, but that's one way. One size does not fit all. Those are some of the assumptions. Okay, so we took care of that. And now strategies for multi-domestic strategy. Remember, the other ones were multinational, global strategies, globalization. I'm looking at the whole world. Now I may not be that large. I'm a small company, I'm a medium-sized company, and I want to fine-tune to a product or to a market that I understand. I may have some connection to that market. I may have some of my staff from that market. I may have alliance with that market, or they may approach me to have alliance with me to sell my product to there, whatever. But my market is very multi-domestic. So when I look at multi-domestic, I specifically adapt to local market. I'm not looking at being one size for everyone, like Visa, what do you call it, the charge card. Okay, decisions are decentralized. Remember, the domestic, I try to do it local. If I look at corporations, a lot of companies, there are basically very central, very rigid, very bureaucratic, but when they have all the stores in operation, they're very decentralized. So more flexible, and the decision making is done at the local office. Here you don't want to go all the way back to the host country. You want to go, the decision should be very decentralized to the region you're at. Products and services are tailored to local uses, considering the language, the culture, income levels, preferences and distribution system. And I use the razor blades. If I look at the razor blades, we buy them in a package of 20. Because we don't want to go back to the store. It's more cost effective, economies of scale. I'm trying to sell into a developing country. They can't afford that. They may want some countries, some regions, even some parts of India, you know what I mean, more the rural section of India, you have to sell one razor at a time. So they can't buy the whole package, so I distribute a little different. I may sell the razors of 5 or 20 razors to the store, and they distribute it one at a time at the retailer. But I have to have the packaging so that one razor has everything on it. So it's a little more packaging. It's still only one razor, but it's easier for them to sell and sell my product. And I'm very adapted to that market, either in their language or their custom or their colors. All this makes a big difference because of the preferences and everything else. So I have to tailor to the local usage. Markets can't expand rapidly. They could grow. Prices are differentiated by the market. Remember, I'm still making the same amount of money. I'm paying a little bit more on repackaging, but instead of selling 20, I'm selling one package of 20. I'm selling 20 individual ones. It's taking me a little bit longer to recoup. I have more customers, but I got a million people. I got more people, or a billion people, so it makes sense for me in that market until that market grows and the people have more disposable income. And now they don't want the one razor, they want 5. Just like they want to stock up and be prepared. Pressure from local adaptation is high. Pressure for lowering costs is low. Okay. A lot of small domestic markets, they're just glad you're operating, or you fine-tune it to them and you become part of them. You become part of their culture. That's what you want to be. Transnational strategy, and basically seeks global competitiveness via trade-off, efficiency versus local adaptation versus organizational learning, access and assets and capability are distributed to the most beneficial location to be specifically specific activity. I just don't go and like here in the United States, we just and somebody will buy it, spread out. In other markets, I got to be very selective, because even though you got the political, the risk, some areas are very stable, other areas in the same country could be unstable. So I have to be very careful. Some value change activities are centralized, some are decentralized, no different than we have here in the U.S. I had to make it what makes sense for that region. How do I get the economies of scale? Now I buy it by bulk, I have all this stuff. How do I spread this out to the local markets, and how much adjustment? The more standardization, all I'm doing is changing the packaging, and the product is the same. That is not an issue. That's a very small, minute cost to my overall cost, but it adds a lot more value to my product. And I didn't change much to my product. This package is different. Look, I could look like a bomb, but here I dress up. I put a suit and tie. All of a sudden, the same product. Nothing changes for me. How I look. Still me, is just the outer appearance is different, and I'm more pleasing and more professional, and hopefully more acceptable to my audience. Okay? And economies of scale, increased knowledge flows, pressures from both local adaptation. We already had that. Okay, so now, what do we have? We have, I think, one more thing on this one. Oh, geez, we're going to finish this one in about 20 minutes. Usually I'm running about 30 minutes. This is not too bad. Okay, entry models. How do I get into it? I go exporting. I don't have to leave anything. I export, import. Remember, in the U.S., there's money for exporting. If you look at the Small Business Association, SBA, they basically have an international arm that will help you export. We got enough stuff importing in here. Where the money's at, where there's tax breaks, where the government, the U.S. government, and other government want to export. What makes Germany so strong? Yeah, they got multinational corporations, but a higher percentage of their exports are done by small and medium businesses. That improves the domestic GDP, gross domestic product for that country. You see what I mean? Because the smaller ones, if they're successful, that's where the labor comes on there, and they're more flexible. They don't have all the baggage. They could adjust real quickly. Sure, they may not have the cash, but if they do this right, they do pretty well. So remember, there's money in exporting, and the U.S. government will help small businesses through the Small Business Association. I'm just throwing that in there. If I look at a lot of colleges, junior colleges, there's a SBA office. Go in there, they're great. I did my research when I did my doctoral. It was on community colleges and international business, and basically it was tied in with the Small Business Administration. Why aren't local in the U.S. local businesses more active in the international market? And one of the biggest reasons is because the community colleges do not promote it. And why they don't promote it is because they're looking at a feeder to the, what they call it, four-year universities, or the local markets don't see a need for it because they're surviving. But if you don't have that international global market, and if you don't instill the students that are coming in and learning about business and everything else, that should be part of their business plan, part of their strategy. How do I get it? Maybe not the first year, but you better be in there and look at you doing international or global exporting. Hey, the internet is there. I don't have to do it. There's programs out there that do it in different languages. I could sell my products. I could distribute it. As long as I got Visa, MasterCard, they'll do the exchange rate, the payments there. A little bit about the, what do you call it, sending over there some paperwork and everything else. But that's not that hard. Once you understand it and you're in that region, you'll have that partnership with the government, the post office, and everything else, or with the trade partners there from the U.S. and the trading partners in the host country or the region you're going, you'll have it pretty good. Licensing and franchising. Remember, licensing is one way. I just license my product over there and they do everything else, and I get some royalties. Franchising, when we learn about franchising, I'm the franchisor, you're the franchisee. All the burden and everything else is on the franchisee that wants to use my brand, have me supply it. They have to pay for everything else, the housing, the building, the land, and everything else, and they're just paying me royalties. After a while, as the franchisee is successful, another one, he opens up another one, or someone else comes in there, then me as a franchisor may say, hey, I'm going to open up some corporate businesses or franchise or for my own. They're not franchisee, but I own it, and not taking away their market. There's some rules with franchising, but I could go in that area and I could start expanding because I know, hey, this area is ripe for my product and service because it happened here. Strategic alliances are joint ventures. You see car manufacturers do a lot of strategic alliances. We talked about the supply side of entering. So you'll make alliance with a supplier there. He or she wants to make more product. They're not into your. Eventually they may. When you look at forward integration, you may say, hey, this is good, and we will become your competitor. Something like HP did from a printer, and also now you have HP computers. The forward integration. But if I'm looking at this strategic alliance, I just want to have a joint venture with them. They already have the name brand, they already have the customer base, and now I'm basically coming in, and what I'm doing is taking my product and everything else, and I'm utilizing their facilities till my name and brand expands. I could stay with them, we could have the joint venture, or we could split up, and but now I understand the distribution, and it's a win-win for everyone. Remember, a lot of our strategic plans are for 5 years. After 5 years, we have to or even 5 years, sometimes in 2 years, depends on political risk. I have to do some changes, but hopefully within the next 5 years I have a general idea which way I'm going to go with my product. Strategically, this makes sense, and I have the logistics, and I have the alliances, and I have everything set up. Now, when I look at this entry mode in here, and I did this is a basic entry mode. Exporting, licensing is the easiest, the next easiest. Franchising, a little complicated, but not that bad. Strategic alliance, now I have to have a contractual agreement and joint venture. We're working together on the same product, a wholly owned subsidiary. Another thing is basically if I open my own operation there, or what they call direct investments. Okay, so we should be all right on that. And so I have that. So now I go transnational. Entry mode. So I have all that. Exit. Does size matter? Small, medium enterprises should engage in cross-border trade are twice likely to outperform those who do not. Why? I got a bigger market. I got my same product. I got more customers. I've got a connection. I got somebody over there. If this market here, the economy dried up, something happened here, they're not buying, they're not selling, I could go someplace else. I got a secondary market. My secondary market may become my primary market. My primary market may become my secondary market. But I have some choices. I'm not waiting until this economy, something dries up, something happens, and all of a sudden, where do I go and start running around? I'm already in there. And as a business, you always should have a contingency plan. Even if I'm a small business, I may just want to do with commercial business, business to business. I always instruct individuals, you should always have a secondary market. So I want the commercial, business to business, but I'm also doing the residential. Even though they're a little more of a pain in the butt, they want more, they don't want to pay as much, more negotiation, I'm going, but they're a market. If something happens, remember, the people in that market also may be business owners to the other market, and when we look at the social interaction, who do they know, it may work to my benefit. So it does make a big difference, okay? And then this one here, when I look at the graph here, should engage. If I'm looking at domestic, small and medium size enterprises, outperform 13%, 87%. International small business 20. Look at the numbers. Outperform those who don't. Okay, so numbers don't lie. Okay, so we're pretty good on that. I think I have everything set up in here. So I'm just going to close this all up, and that is our chapter 7 that I'm looking at. I'm looking at this. I just bring it all back down to expand, show first level. Okay. So now, what I want to say is we're finished with this chapter. If I'm looking at the international market, those who are looking at me, make sure, if you're a small business, medium business, a startup business, your business plan should have an international component. You're a fool if you don't. You're not going to grow. I mean, you don't have to, even if you have 5%, get your foot in there. Learn it. Get in there. Start thinking international. Here's another market. Here's a market. You got the internet. You have all the tools in there. You have the Small Business Administration. You have the government pushing you to do more. And why? You expand. Look at the numbers. You'll have a higher probability. Double your chances of survival. You also double your chances of loss. But most likely, if it's done strategically and you think it out and you have a plan, not just haphazard. I think I'll go here. Oh, I don't know. It's like going on vacation and you don't have an agenda. We're just going to drive, and when the car runs out of gas, we're going to go there. That is not the way you go into the international market. You have to strategically plan in advance. And and so you're looking at the distribution. How do I add value in the global markets? I'm looking at the different nations, their competitiveness. I'm looking at which international expansion, what motivates me, what makes sense for me strategically, what are the risks, whether I'm domestic or, and here we're talking about the international global, what kind of corruption in the host country I'm going, how do I manage this risk, what we call risk management, a strategy that favor global expansion, there's certain strategy, and that depends on your industry, depends on your product, depends on the country, so many different variables. Don't try, I want to be global. You start off with exporting, get a flavor on that, then you start licensing, and you work up till you finally get to last stage of distribution or open up a facility, direct foreign investment right there at the host country. Now you're no longer a tourist. You basically bought property and manufacturing, and you become part of the culture and part of the standardization and part of the, for lack of better words, a domestic company, but with an international flavor to it. Okay? So that's it. My name is Dr. George Mochocki. This is Strategic Management, Chapter 7 or Session 7, an international strategy, creating value in global markets. And I'll see you in my next lecture. Thank you very much. Bye.